Breaking. Nigel Farage has just unveiled a concealed Brussels meeting that Keir Starmer allegedly kept hidden from the British public, and the fallout is immediate, with Labour MPs pressing for answers in Parliament right now. What Farage disclosed about who Starmer met with has triggered serious warnings about the future of Britain's independence, and if you want to understand what your Prime Minister may be doing out of sight, stay tuned, because the details are infuriating. The chain reaction began at 11:23 p.m. last Tuesday when Farage posted a single image on X, grainy and distant but impossible to misread, showing Starmer exiting a black Mercedes outside the European Commission in Brussels, hurried through a restricted entrance typically used by top-level officials. The timestamp raised explosive questions, because earlier that same afternoon, at 3:47 p.m., Starmer was publicly listed as attending constituency engagements in North London, while evidence suggested he was actually hundreds of miles away at the centre of the European Union. Moments later, Farage intensified the pressure by releasing flight data indicating a private government aircraft departing RAF Noordholt at 1:15 p.m. for Brussels and returning at 7:30 p.m. the same day, 6 hours abroad with no official statement, no public schedule, and no explanation. Standing before cameras at Reform UK headquarters and displaying documents like formal evidence, Farage accused the Prime Minister of secretly travelling to Brussels, misleading Parliament, and failing to be transparent with the British people, igniting what has now become a full-scale constitutional storm. And when the documents in his hands confirm what he says they confirm, Farage warned, the consequences would go far beyond political damage. The room exploded as reporters shouted and cameras fired, yet Farage simply gave a calm, knowing smile and walked away. The backlash was immediate and severe. Within 2 hours, Conservative MPs forced an urgent question in Parliament, demanding Starmer account for his movements, while Labour's press operation spiraled into confusion, releasing 3 conflicting explanations in just 90 minutes. First came a flat denial that Starmer had been in Brussels, followed by an admission paired with claims of personal travel, before finally settling on the vague label of an emergency EU consultation, a shift that only deepened suspicion. Insiders at Number 10 described scenes of panic and disorder, with raised voices, frantic calls, and ministers pressing a prime minister who appeared unable to provide clear answers. But the situation darkened further when details of the meeting itself emerged. According to Farage's Brussels-based sources, the gathering included not only EU commissioners but senior figures such as European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, EU Brexit negotiator Maros Sefcovic, and Michel Barnier, a central figure in the Brexit talks long associated with opposition to British independence. The revelation that Britain's Prime Minister allegedly held undisclosed discussions with officials so closely tied to past efforts against the UK's exit has proven so politically toxic that even normally sympathetic media voices are struggling to justify it. The Guardian attempted damage control with an article titled Starmer's Brussels Trip, Much to Do About Nothing. But the backlash online was so overwhelming that it vanished within hours, a retreat that spoke volumes. When even a usually supportive outlet steps back, the situation is clearly dire. Across the country, veterans who served in the Falklands, Iraq, and Afghanistan, people who dedicated their lives to protecting Britain's independence, are watching in disbelief as their leader appears to defer to the very institutions they believed the nation had moved beyond. James Morrison, a 72-year-old former Royal Marine from Portsmouth, told GB News with visible emotion that he spent 3 decades serving Britain, witnessed friends give their lives for its freedom, and now struggles to explain to his grandson why the person leading the country seems to doubt it. At the same time, families face soaring energy costs, pensioners make impossible choices, and small businesses buckle under relentless rules, while the Prime Minister travels privately to meet EU officials living on enormous salaries, luxury expenses, and elite treatment. The contrast is brutal and deeply unsettling, prompting even longtime Labour supporters to question what the party now represents, as criticism grows that this is no longer a movement rooted in working people, but one increasingly associated with distant power circles and secretive decisions that feel like a profound breach of trust, with more still being kept out of public view. While Starmer was in Brussels, fishermen in Grimsby and Peterhead were protesting as EU vessels were accused of operating inside waters meant to be under British control, a bitter scene for communities that overwhelmingly backed Brexit to reclaim their fishing grounds and now felt abandoned as foreign trawlers worked nearby with no visible response from their own government. David Patterson, a third-generation Scottish fisherman, captured the outrage in a viral video viewed more than 800,000 times, saying Starmer was in Brussels cutting deals while European boats took fish and livelihoods, openly questioning what taking back control was supposed to mean. For many, this anger went beyond politics and became deeply personal, rooted in real lives under pressure while leaders appeared comfortable in private meetings with officials linked to decisions affecting those communities. The fury wasn't driven by activists or commentators but by ordinary working people who felt their votes were dismissed and their voices ignored, until an extraordinary moment followed that few expected. King Charles reportedly departed from decades of royal convention with a statement so precisely framed that constitutional experts are still debating its full implications. At a recent Privy Council meeting, one of the most formal settings in British public life, the King directly challenged the principle of judgment at the highest level, emphasizing that transparency in governance is not merely an ideal but the foundation of public trust, warning that when people feel misled, the stability of the constitutional order itself is put at risk. According to palace sources, these words were not simply read aloud but delivered while the king fixed his gaze on Starmer in a prolonged silence, witnesses described as intensely uncomfortable, adding a powerful and unsettling dimension to an already explosive crisis. The signal could not have been clearer: a boundary had been crossed, and the political damage to Starmer is severe. When a monarch known for strict neutrality feels driven to speak, the crisis has entered historic territory. Senior Buckingham Palace sources say the king received more than 50,000 letters in just 48 hours from citizens urging him to step in against what they view as a gradual return of EU influence under Labour branding. The pressure intensified when Prince William, usually silent on political issues, made what royal watchers described as a pointed gesture during a visit to a veterans' charity in Wales, spending extended time privately listening to former service members express fears about Britain's future. A palace aide later revealed that William told one veteran he understood those concerns and stressed that Britain's independence was hard-earned and must be safeguarded, remarks that, though unofficial, reverberated through Westminster. When the heir to the throne echoes warnings about sovereignty, it is seen not as commentary but as a constitutional alert aimed squarely at number 10. At the same time, the fallout has spread rapidly beyond politics. Markets reacted sharply, with the pound falling 2.3% against the dollar in a single session, erasing an estimated £18 billion from the economy overnight, while investors paused UK projects citing instability and a lack of clarity. Polling has been equally punishing, as a Savanta survey released this morning shows Labour support plunging from 34% to 24% in just 6 days, while Reform UK has surged to 28%, marking the strongest showing for a third party in modern British political history. The Conservatives are now polling at 31%, suddenly presenting themselves as the steadier option, as the online backlash explodes with the hashtag BrusselsGate trending worldwide for 72 straight hours and racking up more than 4.7 million mentions, while short-form videos mocking Starmer's undisclosed trip have surged past 100 million views. Demonstrations have broken out in Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and Glasgow, with crowds holding signs accusing Brussels of overreach and branding Starmer a betrayer, reflecting not staged outrage but a genuine revolt from ordinary people who believe their democratic choice was quietly undermined. The economic indicators have only intensified the alarm, with the FTSE 100 falling 340 points in 2 days, its sharpest drop since the lockdown era, and business confidence sinking to levels unseen since the 2008 financial crisis. The Confederation of British Industry warned that political uncertainty is draining an estimated £2.3 billion a week from the economy through delayed investments and cancelled deals, while overseas firms considering post-Brexit moves to Britain are freezing plans. A senior executive at a major German automotive supplier told the Financial Times they could not commit investment without clarity on whether the Prime Minister was privately reshaping the regulatory landscape, a remark echoed across national headlines. The consequences of secrecy are no longer abstract, as workers and families feel the impact in real time, and the plot has thickened further with European leaders rapidly distancing themselves. The European Commission president described the meeting as informal and routine, directly clashing with Starmer's claim of an emergency consultation, leaving a stark conclusion that someone is not telling the truth, and raising the possibility that the full story has yet to surface. Inside number 10, the mood has reportedly collapsed into suspicion and blame, with ministers demanding to know who approved the Brussels trip and senior figures insisting they were never informed, consulted, or even aware the Prime Minister was leaving the country. Cabinet sources say Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner confronted Starmer in a meeting described as volatile, with raised voices and slammed doors, before exiting visibly shaken and refusing to address reporters gathered outside. Internal messaging groups with names like Truth Caucus and Labour's Future are now openly discussing his removal, and the debate is no longer whether it will happen, but how soon. Foreign Secretary David Lammy appeared strained at a recent press conference, fumbling basic questions and contradicting earlier remarks, as insiders claim he privately warned of resignation unless full clarity is provided, only to be urged to hold back amid fears the government could unravel. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has fallen conspicuously silent, a move seasoned Westminster watchers interpret as positioning rather than loyalty, suggesting preparation rather than defense. The cabinet is no longer merely split, it is locked in open internal conflict, and beneath the surface the situation may be worse still, with reports that 3 junior ministers have already submitted resignations that party leadership is attempting to suppress, a detail leaked by an enraged backbencher who believes Starmer is tearing the party apart from the inside. Transport Secretary Louise Hay was the first to step aside, citing irreconcilable differences over transparency, followed within hours by Communities Minister Jim McMahon, and by Thursday evening Wales Minister Joe Stevens had done the same. Each resignation letter, now reported by The Telegraph, used strikingly similar language about trust, honesty, and the British people deserving better, a pattern that points not to coincidence but coordination. These ministers did not walk away in isolation, they appear to be moving in sync, building pressure and momentum that threatens to trigger a wider collapse of the government in a matter of weeks. Senior Labour MP John Trickett then crossed a line few ever dare, publicly stating that if the Prime Minister cannot or will not explain himself to Parliament and the country, he no longer holds the moral authority to govern, a devastating indictment from within his own ranks. When backbenchers openly question a leader's right to remain in office, Westminster understands the message: the clock is ticking. And the danger deepens further with reports of leaked documents from a Brussels hotel alleging that Starmer met not only EU officials but representatives of a group described as the European Integration Working Group. If authentic and if they confirm what multiple sources claim, the issue is no longer a discreet visit but the possibility of undisclosed negotiations aimed at drawing Britain back under EU regulatory influence without parliamentary approval, public scrutiny, or a single vote. Such a scenario would imply that hard-fought decisions made by voters were being quietly reversed through backroom channels, treating public consent as an inconvenience rather than a mandate, with the documents reportedly outlining a gradual, staged process that has only intensified fears of a deliberate effort to bypass democratic accountability. The documents allegedly describe a staged process, beginning with regulatory alignment in financial services, followed by environmental rules, trade policy, and immigration, gradually transferring authority back toward Brussels while Starmer publicly frames it as sensible cooperation and shared benefit, a contrast that would be politically crushing. This goes far beyond routine governance and has been described by critics as a grave breach of duty, prompting legal scholars to weigh in with warnings that have intensified the pressure. Professor Jonathan Black of Cambridge University, a constitutional law expert, told Sky News that if a prime minister entered binding arrangements with foreign entities without informing Parliament, it could breach the Constitutional Reform and Governance Act of 2010, which requires proper parliamentary oversight of such commitments. He explained that committing the country to obligations without due process would represent more than political misjudgment and could amount to serious misconduct in public office, language that is now echoing across the national media. At the same time, lawyers representing pro-Brexit groups have reportedly written to the Attorney General calling for an immediate inquiry into the Brussels visit, citing specific statutes and urging formal action should wrongdoing be established. With legal scrutiny mounting alongside political fallout, the situation shows no sign of fading. As Labour struggles internally and Starmer remains largely out of sight, Nigel Farage has moved quickly to seize the moment, launching a nationwide tour and drawing large crowds, including more than 2,000 people who queued in the rain in Stoke-on-Trent yesterday to hear him speak. They thought Brexit was finished, Farage told the crowd, his voice rising with intensity. They thought they could wait us out, tire us into submission, sneak back into Brussels while we weren't watching. But we are watching. We see everything, and we will never surrender our country to foreign control again. The roar of applause lasted nearly 3 minutes, a vivid contrast to Starmer's fumbling explanations, highlighting a striking political gulf, Farage appearing resolute, principled, unstoppable, while Labour struggles to regain credibility. The response has been overwhelming. Reform UK's membership applications crashed their website twice in 4 days as tens of thousands joined by the hour, and donations flooded in so rapidly the party had to hire emergency accountants to manage the inflow. For the first time in modern British history, a third party is more than a protest vote. It is a credible force poised to govern. Polls underscore the seismic shift. Conservatives at 31%, Reform UK at 28%, and Labour collapsing to 24%. Britain has not seen a three-way split like this since before World War II, and analysts are openly discussing scenarios where no party commands a majority, coalitions are inevitable, and Farage holds the balance of power. The establishment's worst fears are materializing, and Farage is exploiting it with precision, positioning Reform UK as the party of transparency, integrity, and British values, speaking to workers, veterans, pensioners, and the overlooked, forging a cross-party coalition rooted in the concerns of ordinary citizens, former Labour voters enraged by Brussels, Conservatives frustrated with weak leadership, and young people determined not to repeat past mistakes are all tuning into Farage's message. He speaks their concerns directly, validates their frustrations, and offers a vision of true British independence. The surge in support is historic. Betting markets now give Reform UK a 40% chance of winning the most seats in a snap election, a scenario that is no longer fringe but a real political upheaval in motion. Bookmakers have even stopped taking bets on Starmer surviving the year, with the consensus suggesting he could be gone by spring. The next 72 hours are crucial, shaping the future of Britain for a generation. Parliament reconvenes Monday for emergency questions about Brussels, and Starmer must appear to face MPs who are ready to strike. If he evades, he's finished. If he lies and is exposed, he's finished. Even telling the full truth about his negotiations could seal his fate, leaving the Prime Minister trapped between political ruin and constitutional peril.